Sure. So my name is Hannah Grace Howard. I'm a PhD candidate in the Anthropology department here at Boston University. I'm on the sociocultural track. The anthropology program actually has 3 different tracks. So I'm in that. And my work kind of broadly brings together anthropology with theology in order to understand the care practices of Greek Orthodox Christians in Athens. So the thing that I'm currently working on is my dissertation, so the big one as you're starting out. It's called Liturgical Care, Theological and Political Belonging in Athenian Greek Orthodox Charities. And it, like I said, looks at the care projects and charitable networks of Greek Orthodox Christians in Athens. When I started working on it, I was trying to understand why the church was involving itself in humanitarianism in Athens, because for those of you who know anything about Greece in the last decade or 2 decades, it's been hit by an economic crisis and a refugee crisis. And so it's a pretty saturated aid landscape. There's a lot of work from the UN, there's a lot of work from the Greek state, there's a lot of work from kind of secular NGOs and grassroots organizations. And so it seemed to me while I was living there that the church wasn't really needed, and that what they were doing wasn't really actually helping very much, and yet they insisted on continuing to do it. So I was trying to understand that puzzle when I started my fieldwork. And I ultimately found that, they're not doing it because they think there's this massive gap necessarily that they're filling, but because it's actually part of their kind of pious, gendered, self-making practices that are pretty inextricable from how they view themselves both as good Greeks and as good Christians. And so there was kind of this sense of course they're doing it, because why wouldn't they? Who else would? And how would they be who they are without doing so? Sure. My most recent publication is actually a more kind of public-facing piece in Anthropology News. It's called The Knowable Stranger, and it was about my own positionality and kind of situation in these care organizations in Athens, and coming to terms with the fact that in the kind of in-between spaces that I occupied, both as being not Greek but being Orthodox, I started to be seen by a lot of these women in these care spaces as this kind of ideal recipient of care. And so at the same time that I was witnessing so many other people who needed humanitarian aid, who needed charity so much more than I did, I was receiving so much from these women. They were always giving me food, they were always giving me little gifts, the priests were always buying me coffee. And so the publication is really me reckoning with how I occupied a really particular liminal category in those spaces, and had this really conflicting relationship with how much help I was being given when I felt like I wasn't really the person in the community who needed it most. I think the answer is probably twofold, because when I think of my field, I think of 2 different things. On one hand, I think of where my research actually takes place and the kind of context of my work. So studying Orthodox people in Greece. And in that sense, it really excites me because I lived in Greece for a long time and I really love it. And I'm Orthodox myself, and I deal with a lot of, complications or complicated feelings around certain things that come out of the church, or certain practices and habits that the church has. And so I hope that my research can kind of speak back to some of those things. And on the other hand, my field much more broadly is just anthropology. CURA obviously brings together people from the School of Theology, from political science, from anthro. And so if I'm thinking about my field largely in terms of that, I think anthropology excites me because I so appreciate the kind of texture to analysis that doing ethnography can offer. I really enjoy the chance to get real people's voices in their terms kind of on the page alongside my own. I think that's something really powerful, and I think that's something that when we're going into the classroom to teach really resonates with students. So I think anthropology excites me on one hand because of how much it allows me to offer to my students. So I've followed CURA for a really long time. When I first was applying to BU, one of the things that appealed to me was that if I was going to be in the anthropology department, I would still have access to a lot of interdisciplinary kind of work and centers, and CURA was one of those that I was really interested in. So I like how it has always brought together, I think, really timely conversations around religion and politics through the annual colloquium series. So I've always known about it. I've gone to a few lectures. I've seen a few of the working paper seminars in past years' colloquia, and then this year I'm just really excited to be a participant myself.